Good morning. First and foremost, really quickly, just want to create some context. How many people in this auditorium have no idea who I am? Raise your hands. That fucking hurts. Actually, if we can keep the lights on, that'd be amazing. I'd rather see the faces. I figured that was the case, so I'm going to take a few minutes to give you context of where I come from, and then we can go into the spiel, and then I guess we'll do some Q&A. I was born in Belarus in the former Soviet Union. I came to America when I was 3 years old, and I was extremely poor, as you could imagine. My family lived in a studio apartment in Queens, New York, with 8 family members. My dad got a job at a liquor store getting paid $2 an hour, and that's where our American dream started. He eventually saved up all his money over 5 years and bought a small liquor store in New Jersey, which is where we moved, where I grew up. I was always a business kid, salesman, selling lemonade, baseball cards, whatever I could do to make money. When I was 14, my dad dragged me into the liquor store that he owned, and I went from making $1,000 a weekend selling baseball cards to making $2 an hour bagging ice for 15 hours a day. So went from $1,000 a day to $30 a day. I call those the shit years. Somewhere around 16, 17, I fell in love with the idea of wine, and more importantly, collecting wine. At this point, to take it a step back, I want everybody to understand, by the time I decided I wanted to run my dad's business, I was probably 18 or 19 years old. I had never even owned a computer in my life. I had probably spent less than 5 hours of my entire life at 18 years old in front of a computer. I'm a little bit older than some peeps in this room, and so that's just the way it was. I mean, there's a lot of people in this room that don't remember the world pre-internet, but it existed. And so, you know, I thought that I was going to open up 100 liquor stores, 100 wine stores across America, you know, one day sell it and buy the New York Jets, which is an American football team, which is my business and life goal still to this day. In 1994, I went to college, and I was in my dorm room playing Madden 94 on Sega Genesis, and my friend ran in, and he said, "You have to come and see this." And so after I finished my game, I went into my friend's dorm room, and him and 7 of my friends were sitting in front of a computer, and it was the first time that I had ever heard which is old school dial-up internet, and my friends stood in front of this computer, and my friend Joe looked at me, and he said the words that changed my life forever. He stood in front of this computer. I had never seen the internet before. I said these profound words: "Is this the information superhighway?" You know, that's what we called it then. And he looked at me and he said, "Yeah." He goes, and these are the words that changed my life. He's in front of a computer. He looks at me and he says, "We can get chicks on this thing." And so we proceeded to spend 7 hours on AOL talking to what we think was girls. Somewhere about 5 minutes into this process, I sat there. Again, this was old school. Like, there was a guy in front of a computer and 7 people, like, hanging over it. I stood there, and about 5 or 6 minutes into ever seeing the internet, I said, "Holy crap, I think I can sell shit on this." And I decided by that night that I no longer needed to open 1,000 liquor stores, that I was going to figure this thing out. There was something here. By that summer in 1996, about a year later, and into that summer in 1996, I launched WineLibrary.com, which was the second e-commerce wine business in the United States. The site cost me $15,000 to build in 1996. In the first year of operations, the entire site sold $800 worth of wine. That's exactly right. I don't know how many of you have a Soviet father, but Sasha was not happy with that ROI. What was interesting was that nobody was committed to it. I was still somewhat in school. I still had no fucking idea what to do with websites, and most people were not comfortable with putting their credit card into a computer back then. What's interesting to me, and what I want to spend the rest of my time talking about, is how did I go from 1996, that site doing $850 in sales, to the fact that when I did take over my dad's wine business in 1998, it was a $3 million business, and in a 5-year window from 98 to 2003, I grew that business from a $3 to a $60 million business. I did it with all the tactics and skill sets that most of this room has. In 1998, most people weren't thinking about email marketing. They definitely weren't thinking about AdWords or banner retargeting or all the quant-driven stuff that many people think about here. Look, I wasn't really that kind of character. I think I'm more qual, more creative, more emotion, more pizzazz, more salesman. But layering this data and all these other things were really the backbone of how I built this business. The thing that I want to spend most of my time in this talk, though, about is as I got ready for this conference and I started understanding who's in the audience and I followed the hashtag and tried to really bring value here today, the thing that I want people to understand is there's 2 core words that I spend a lot of time thinking about right now. The new thing that I'm spending most of my time on is something that I call the attention graph. Right? At the end of the day, we're all battling to create a conversion, to sell something, whether you're hardcore DR and math and quant, or if you're trying to build a brand and play the long game. A lot of people in this room, as I was digging down the rabbit hole on my flight and looking at what you did for a living, there's a lot of people in this room that have really figured out conversion, right? Really understand the value of the current state of the internet. But the thing that I spend almost all of my time on is lifetime value. Right? Because the thing that's happening right now with my smartest math-driven quant friends is there's a disrespect to what happens to create an actual brand or business for the long term. If this was just a math game, Groupon and Living Social and Zynga would have won this a long time ago. So what I'm really trying to figure out is if people are really understanding the mix of the two. And the value, my friends, is in the attention graph. Let me explain. I have 1.2 million followers on Twitter. That's in 2015 in February. In 2007, when I had 100,000 followers on Twitter, I was getting dramatically more conversion because the supply of noise was so different. We live in a world where I know more than anything. Guys, let me take a step back. You don't mind, Mike? Let me just take a step back. More than I know that the sun will come up tomorrow, I know one thing. Marketers ruin everything. And I need everybody to understand that. How many people here have done email marketing in their career? Have done email marketing, understand it? Raise it high. Get with me. I want to see this. Perfect. In 1997, I had a 240,000 person wine email list that had 91.1% open rates. Thank you, Germany. Have a good night. And this is why this is a fun room for me, because I know who's in this room. 73% click-through ratio to the product or the buy button. 1997. Now, I'm sure all of you know that those numbers are not going to be touched. You know why? In 1997 in America, marketers hadn't fucked up email yet, right? At that point, when you got it, you read everything. For all the old school people in here, in 94, 95, we read every fucking word of every email. That's right. And when Google AdWords came out, I bought the word wine on Google AdWords the day Google AdWords came out for 5 cents. And owned it for 9.5 months before anybody bid me up. That's how you win. That's the arbitrage. We're sitting in a room here right now where a far majority of people don't understand the arbitrage value that's going on right now. They understand the tried and true of SEM or banner retargeting or buying on the exchange. They understand those things because they've been established. But it is stunning to me how many people are disrespecting Facebook dark posts, unpublished posts and retargeting right now in a world where I've seen bigger DR conversion rates through that channel than I've seen since the beginning of Google AdWords as the best conversion funnel I've ever seen. Yet, most people are struggling with it because the far majority of the skilled practitioner in this room understand DR and conversion, but they understand it more in a banner and Google world, not in a Facebook world that is completely reliant on the creative, right? Because understand one thing, right this second, Facebook is sitting on the biggest data and most accurate data set we've seen ever. It is stunning how far down the rabbit hole and how much we can use our other data and implement it and create lookalike audiences and create conversion. Yet, even though for the last 20 months the best practitioners have been exposing this, the market is still not aware. So I can still drive $2 and $3 and $4 CPMs to websites right now off of Facebook, but they were $1.50 5 minutes ago, and they're going to be $11 CPMs in 5 minutes as the market corrects. See, the game we need to keep playing, and the reason that I was able to build that business, and the reason that I've been able to continue what I've done, and the reason I invested back in 2006 and 7 and 8 in things like Twitter and Facebook and Tumblr, is that it's just always the same old game, my friends. Arbitrage, right? It's the same old game. Where is the value while the rest of the market doesn't understand it? You can play catch up or you can be a leader. The leader has the opportunity of getting dramatically bigger ROI in the short term, but the problem is you have to be willing to take the risk. You can't wait for the white papers to come out to tell you how to do it. You can't wait. And so I implore a lot of you in this room to really take a step back and really think about what's going on, because what is happening right in front of all of our eyes right now is we are living through the single biggest culture shift of our time. This internet thing is grossly underrated by every single person in this room, the rock stars sitting here, me included. This is only a 20-year phenomenon. The internet, as we know it, for the consumer, is a 20-year thing. I know there's some nerd in the back and saying, actually, Gary, in the 1950s, I know fucking nerd, but I mean normal people. 20 years. 20 years. How many people in this room remember the world pre-internet? Raise your hands. I mean, it's just, does anybody understand what's happening here? It's just started. And people think it's over. I remember being at a conference and like, oh, Facebook and Twitter won, it's over, right? In the 36 months since the fucking idiot said it was over, Instagram, Pinterest, Snapchat, it's just started. Everything we talk about, everything every person in this room talks about didn't exist 10 years ago, maybe 12. 12 years ago, 12. None of this shit existed. So I implore everybody to understand a couple things. One, if you're not thinking about lifetime value, your play only lasts for so long. And so while you're converting or doing whatever you're doing, and more importantly, actually I'm going to take another step back. Marketers, brand people, ad tech people, please, can we start making the conversation about depth versus width? Like, I'm so tired of how many fucking impressions or awareness this has created. I don't know about you guys, but like, when I was building my wine business, there was no justification to Sasha that a lot of fucking people heard about it. He was very simple. He's like, how many bottles of Pinot Noir did it sell, right? Super simple. And so what's happening in the marketing world is we're scoring for the sake of awareness, and we're not understanding what it's doing for sales. On the flip side, for a lot of people in this room, we need to start debating what's the emotional connection, what brand are we actually building, how is it not just quant, how are we building something that lasts when our arbitrage or our quant doesn't work anymore, right? So look, here's the world I live in right now. If you're in this room and you're trying to sell stuff and you haven't realized that on an everyday basis, Instagram continues to grow and become the leading social network, you're not living in 2015. We're watching it completely sweep, and look, I did as much homework as I could on what's happening in the German market. The growth is there, but just to give you an insight, I'm sure this is at some level the rationale why to bring American speakers to this conference. Look, I have a lot of friends in Europe, and I always tell them, and as you heard earlier, being born in Europe, I'm completely fascinated by the notion of how you can see trends happen in the US market and then take advantage of that to understand one thing: no matter where you live, so many of the human behaviors are similar. Obviously, there's cultural differences. Obviously, look, I come from a place where people want to keep secrets because you want to be safe, but the bottom line is so many things translate. So please pay attention to the fact that Instagram is growing at a rapid pace. But for a majority of this room, you don't like Instagram, do you? Because on the post level, there is no link out to quantify your conversion, right? There's no link out to drive your sale. Yet, we disrespect the attention graph. That at the end of the day, the consumer is spending an enormous amount of time actually consuming their photos on Instagram. And though I have only 55 or 60,000 followers on Instagram, I'm able to drive a lot more awareness and results. Because by owning a wine shop, by owning my data on how I sell books, by owning all the funnel and understanding it all the way through, though I can't quantify against the link, because that's not how Instagram works, I can isolate tests very easy and understand I am creating my conversion funnel because it all comes down to attention. Attention is what I give a shit about. I run a company called Vaynermedia right now. We have Fortune 500 companies, you know, Unilever and Pepsi and Toyota, big, big brands. It's insane. It's insane what's going on with television advertising in the US. An $80 billion industry. And all we're trying to do, look, no matter what you do in this room, no matter what you do, every person in this room has one job. The job is to grab somebody's attention and then tell them your story and then sell them your shit. Whether you're trying to raise money for your school or sell sneakers or whatever you're trying to do, that is your job. You need somebody's attention, and then you get a chance to tell them your story. And the fact of the matter is, what's really interesting to me is that people are misunderstanding how quickly the attention is fleeting away from things. Just now, people are sitting in a conference room around the world saying, we should really get serious about our Twitter strategy, right? I mean, that's happening. That's real talk. Meanwhile, you just heard what's happened to my interest graph or attention graph from 2007 to 2015. Bigger results at 100,000 followers than 1.2 because the supply and demand of how many tweets and how much one can pay attention to. So right now, I am spending an ungodly amount of time on Instagram and Snapchat, and in 36 months, the rest of the US market will say, oh, let's start getting serious about these things. And then I'll be focusing on Yik Yak or something else that has emerged because the opening moments are always the most valuable. Then you hit critical mass, you get value out of that, and then it starts sloping on the other end. And so that is the rinse and repeat of marketing always and forever, from radio to television to cable television to the internet to Web 1.0 to Web 2.0 to social media. It's the same old game over and over and over again. And the winners in this game over and over again are not scared to waste their time. I spent 41 sleepless nights 2 years ago trying to figure out social cam. Social cam was going to be the next big thing. It exploded in 5 minutes in the US because Facebook gave it a disproportionate advantage in the news feed when it first came out, and everybody was on it. And I didn't sleep for shit. The big thing that I'm proud of with myself is when I see something and I believe in it, I completely shut down, go into a cave, and figure it the fuck out, right? And what that means for me, because I work 15 hours a day, is 11 p.m. till 4 in the morning. And so I spent a month from 11 p.m. to 4 in the morning figuring social cam out. And then it was dead, right? Dead. And a lot of my buddies who know this is my thesis, they got a real kick out of that because they were sick of me talking about how I won on Facebook and Twitter and Tumblr. But this time they got to stick it to me. And they did, and I wasted my time. However, only 9.5 months later, something came out called Vine. And all the things I learned about the way the consumers engaged with social cam became enormous IP for me on how to figure out how people used Vine. And even though Vine, ironically, is starting to slow down and lose its luster, it had an 18-month run where there was a lot of value. I did start an agency that represented all the Vine and Snapchat stars with a guy by the name of Jerome Jarre and built an enormously big $10 million business in 24 months, all on the IP that I learned. Because the truth is, The psychology of the user is always the same. The platforms may change, but the behavior is similar. And that's what we need to figure out. Back to TV. $80 billion spent. How many people in this room, besides live sports, now watch TV on their time? Not when it airs, but you watch it on Netflix or HBO Go or DVR or PVR, what do you guys call it? What do you call it? DVR? What do you call it? DVD. Great. How many people watch their favorite TV shows not when it actually airs, but when you want to watch it? Raise your hands. Oh, weird. Everybody. And how many of you in the last year, every time you get a chance, fast forward every single commercial? Raise your hands. Yeah. And so this is what's happening, my friends. $80 billion spent to try to tell stories to a world where we all run away from it. How many people here can't wait to open their cell phone and click the pop-up banner ad that takes over the page they want? That's what I figured. Yet plenty of people here give recommendations to use it. My friends, it's cops and robbers, mouse and cat. We as consumers don't want to be bothered. We don't want to be interrupted. The reason Facebook has worked so well is because as the world's gone mobile and the ads are natively in the feed, they're not disrupting us from what we actually want to do, right? I, for example, will never buy a Samsung item again. You know why? Because this is how marketing works in 2015. Last year, the New York Jets, my favorite football team, were going to trade a player. So every day, I was going to ESPN.com on my phone in between every meeting just to make sure I didn't miss it. Of course, I had all the updates and followed all the things, but I just did not want to miss it. So 20 times a day, I would go to ESPN.com. Every single time that I did, a big fat banner popped up for Samsung, right? All of them. And as you guys know, the banners on cell phones, they're small. And the X, even smaller. And our thumb, even bigger, right? So 8 out of the 20 times when I went to exit out so I could go to where I really wanted to go, I missed the X and I clicked the Samsung banner. Back home at agency land and Samsung land and quant guy land, they're like, look at this impressions. Look at these 20 impressions. He clicked it 8 times. That's an incredible click-through ratio. All right. So back home, the math looks phenomenal, right? Back home, the click-through ratio is through the fucking roof. But in reality, I called my wife the 8th time, and I said, Lizzie, you listen to me. This family, until I'm dead, will never buy a fucking Samsung item again. True. We all know it, right? We all know it. And I tweeted out to my 1.2 million followers 18 times, fuck you, Samsung. And that's okay if only a couple thousand saw it, back to the problem. But then I took a selfie on Instagram and said, fuck you, Samsung. More people saw it. And I've gone on for the last 15 months to conferences and telling this story to fuck you, Samsung. And my hope is that 2 or 3 of you are affected deeply by this and never buy another Samsung item. What that means is the ROI on that 50% click-through is horrible. And that's how it works, isn't it? Right? There is so much wrong data, right? There's so much wrong big data. We talk about it, we look at it, but the problem is we just have a whole lot of marketers who just like to market. And the problem is we just have a whole lot of math guys and gals who just like the math of it. But at the end of the day, aren't we really all just sitting here talking about actual business? Like, how the fuck do I sell this sneaker? Huh? How do I sell this sneaker? I sell it by many different ways. And sure, I can have somebody go to my website, look at this sneaker, cookie the fuck out of him, follow him around the internet until he fucking gives up and buys it. I can do that. And I like that. That's one way to do it. But that can't be the only way to do it. Because that person might be, after the 19th time that he goes on a website and sees another banner for this sneaker, that person might turn it into Samsung, right? We have to do other things. Plus, more importantly, we live in a world now of an alternative. Listen, I have no vested interest in Facebook doing great or not great. I fully believe that I will be making fun of Facebook dark post ads in 3 to 4 years when the ROI swing goes the other direction. But I implore everybody to at least understand the psychology of why it works. It works because it's native in the stream. It works because it's a mix of the two groups of people that are in this room, the quant and the qual, right? It's targeted as fuck, but you still need to put the right video and the picture and the right copy and the right creative to hit them in the ear. It's always the brain and the heart. It's always the brain and the heart. And way too many people are either on team brain or team heart, and you need to smash them together. And when you find platforms that allow you to do both, a la what Facebook does right now, you've got a very special moment. And I'm sure that Instagram or Snapchat or Yik Yak or whatever else comes out in the future will pay attention to the value prop here. And it is a major value prop. And so if I can get anybody here, especially on the quant, banner, retargeting, math side, to please take a deeper look into that world, you will see humongous dividends. But please go into that world with much bigger eyes to recognize you need to respect the creative, because the creative is always the variable to the conversion. All right? So there's that. What else can I do in my 9 minutes? A couple other things I want to talk to you about. Why did I hate Samsung? It's something I want you guys to spend a lot of time on, and ironically, the answer is time. I invested in Uber pretty early on. I missed the first round or two, which was a huge mistake on my part because I love Travis, but then I finally invested in it, and I'm still going to do great, and I'm excited about it. But why did I ultimately make the plunge after I passed on it to invest? It was because my brother, who took the first Uber ride in New York, which I think is amazingly interesting, I remember us thinking about how would Uber work in New York in a world where we have the best transportation system in the world. And what I realized a couple months in was, oh my God, Uber doesn't sell transportation, Uber sells time. The reason I take an Uber is because I'm guaranteed it's going to be there, and I'm taking away the risk of waiting 3 or 4 minutes for a cab. Uber sells time. The reason I was pissed at Samsung was because every time I clicked that banner, it took me another 100th of a second to exit out the website and go back to where I wanted. And that 100th of a second really matters to me. If you take a step back with me, my friends, right now and journey with me, I promise you, outside of the health and well-being of the people you love the most, and second, your money, the thing that you value the most in the world is time. Think about the last time that your phone or your laptop where the internet was a couple of 100 seconds slower than normal. Think about how pissed you were, right? It's crazy how these seconds have become so valuable in a world where we're getting pounded all the time, where every minute counts. How many people in this room, this is back to the old school pre-internet. I mean, I grew up pre-internet. I worked before the internet completely took over. How many people here remember when you worked 9 to 5, 9 to 6, 9 to 7, that was it, that the day was over? Remember that world? That world doesn't exist anymore. You're getting pounded 24/7, 365. And so what's happened in the world that's become so intense is we value time so much more. And so, why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because that's why my open rates on email have gone down from 91% to 35%. It's why my tweets aren't being engaged with as much. It's the supply and demand of attention. And the core pillar of that is your time. So we as marketers, as business people, as who we are in the world, we need to figure out when we're doing executions, are we actually respecting the person on the other side's time? Are we actually caring about that at all? Because every second that goes by, that is becoming a bigger and bigger importance and value prop to the end consumer. And so many of our tactics completely disrespect that, and it's something that I want a lot of people to think about. So, what else? Outdoor media. I know this doesn't sit for a lot of people in this room, but it's a perfect example for me of behavior changes because we're living through the biggest culture shift of our time. Billboards, multi-billion-dollar industry around the world. Do me a favor when you leave this conference. If you happen to be driving in the next couple of months, look around. I promise you, there's not a single person that's a passenger in a car anymore that is not looking down at their phone. So how can the ROI of a billboard be as valuable as it used to be when the attention is going in the other direction because of the technology shifts we're living through? As a matter of fact, do me a real big favor. When you're driving, make sure you look over. I promise you another thing. Forget about the passenger. 3 out of every 5 of the drivers, they're also looking at their phone. So my friends, people aren't looking at billboards anymore. They're not even looking at the fucking road. The average 27-year-old in a recent survey could not recall anything on the right side of a website, including the most important information. Why? That's where banners have lived for so long. And literally, it has become a blind spot to the end consumer. A literal blind spot on the screen, because we grew up, and the 27-year-old grew up with Facebook pre-desktop when it was there, and could not recall anything, including the most important information at scale. Tens of thousands of people surveyed could not recall the right side of a website, because that is the blind spot. Arbitrage, ROI. I want to talk to you about another sector that is becoming massively important and is being disrespected and has a 24 to 36 month window for you to get a bigger return on your investment. I call it micro-celebrity. I don't mean people with 1 million or 2 million followers. I mean the long tail of influence. I have seen enormous conversion rates, great brand building, sales, the shit we should all care about, by engaging people that have 500, 937, 13,001 followers, especially when you do it on Instagram. I've seen very little on Twitter, but on Instagram, completely over the top, back to the point of attention. And so I highly recommend people in this room that are trying to create ROI and understand, sell, brand, market, for you to start going down a path. There's a company I'm desperately trying to invest in right now. I think I'm going to get it. Otherwise, I wouldn't say it out loud. It's a company called Everywhere. You may want to check it out. They're using Instagram's API. You can literally circle a location on a map, and it'll show you the most influential people in that area on Instagram using Instagram's new open API of location. It has been stunning to me how you can find the most popular girl in high schools, give her a free t-shirt, and get enormous ROI on your campaign. Even if that free t-shirt is $50, even if that free t-shirt is $500. For a lot of people in this room that rely completely on math and the quant and the ads, you'd be stunned how the math works out on an acquisition that looks like that. And sure, I know a lot of people are sitting here and thinking it's not scalable, but let me promise you something, my friends. The best stuff, the stuff that sells the most, is always scaling the unscalable. If it's scalable, everybody else is doing it. And that ruins the supply and demand of attention. And so we're living in interesting times. It's 2015. How many people in this room, including when they're sleeping, are never arm's length away from their phone? Raise your hands. Raise it high. Look at this. I mean, this shit is crack cocaine, right? I mean, and this starts a process, if you really understand it, that gets really interesting, which is, it starts here, and eventually I think it's gonna be here, and eventually it's gonna be here. And look, I'm as pissed as anybody that we're gonna be fucking robots, but it's gonna happen, right? And what you need to understand about this is why and how come, and what's really important about that, it's the attention, right? It's always the attention. If all of our eyes and ears are here, and you're not thinking mobile first, guys, if you're not thinking mobile first, guys, if you have websites that you give a fuck about that are not mobile friendly, that are not mobile native in 2015, you're just not living in the world that we actually live in, right? You're just not. And look, I probably have 2 or 3 websites that aren't mobile friendly, right? Like I know we all do it, but that is another call to action from this talk. We've got to fix that. This is absolutely the entire market, the whole thing. And then let's think about why Google is nervous. Because if you think about it right now, if you take a step back, this has been fun to do in crowds, especially educated crowds like this. This is stunning. It is fascinating how much less I actually search on Google on my phone versus the way I did it on my desktop. The behavior is so different, isn't it? And that we have to learn from. We have to learn from that behavior. We have to understand how to be mobile first. We have to understand that we're just starting. I saw I'll end with this, and then we'll go into Q&A. Just saw a startup, because I do a lot of investing in the US. They've got smart pants, right? So we all know about smartphones, right? Are you, Germany, ready for smart pants? Let me tell you what your smart pants do. Your smart pants talk to your phone. Let me paint you a picture of what's going on in the US and across the world, which is, I think everybody here can agree that within the next half decade to a decade, all of us are paying for everything with this, right? This is how you pay. Now let me talk to you about how your smart pants talk to your smartphone. So you put... Is that how you guys do it here? Oh, it's you doing it? Just give me
That's my job.
Give me 2 minutes, do please, I promise.
I try to.
Okay, thank you. All right, try your best. Ready? Smart pants. You put on your fucking smart pants, right? In Germany, like now, you give a talk. You go to the airport right after this, just like I do, and I try to go eat something. I am supposed to be putting on a little less weight. I've been working out. I run to Burger King. I want to buy some food. I say, give me a Whopper and some fries. Great. I order it. $6.59. Great. I take out my phone. I go to pay for it. Declined. And my phone says, from my smart pants, on a text, say, eat a salad, fat ass. Everything in our lives over the next 2-3 decades will be smart. Our wine glass will tell us to drink the wine because it's getting warm. Our pants will tell us to eat a salad. We have to understand, in a connected, fast-paced world, attention is the only asset, and if we as marketers continue to disrespect the consumer and continue to force them to click our buttons and only rely on the math and make us feel good and not recognize that we're hurting our brands, not helping, over the long term, we will lose. And I implore you not to lose. Thank you.
Super.
Thank you.